YouTube, back again. What up? It's your boy JSM 801. Guys, I know I have not put up any content here on YouTube in a long time. Been working on some other projects. Got a lot going on. Finally freeing up some time to redesign some new sneakers. And one of them is one of the best threes in my opinion that came out. I know everyone's like, oh, they're a little plain, they don't like the yellowing on the heel tab, but today we are going to be painting up some of the Fragment threes that dropped out a couple weeks ago. Overall, the quality of the shoe is super dope. The only thing I don't like is it's, to me visually, it's not a Fragment vibe. So today we're going to be using some Angelus royal blue, which matches perfectly, guys, and I'm gonna have all the paints in the description. I'll put all the links up in the description. But let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're gonna need is some tape, and I'll walk you through my taping process, guys. This is a fairly easy custom, but as easy it is to paint, guys, the goal is to make this shoe look like it came factory. So we use light coats, keep them nice and thin. The most important is, of course, the bonding agent. We want this custom to last. We don't want it to break down over time. If it gets scuffed, if you kick something, if you spill something on it, you can scrub it and not have to worry about it. So we're gonna walk through some of the steps that I do to make this as durable as possible. I'll talk about the finish that I'll be using on this shoe once we're all done and spraying it down. But let's go ahead and get started, guys. So the first thing I'm going to be using, of course, is just some mid-grade tape. This is a general purpose. It's not too sticky, but it will stick to everything that I need it to. Guys, and it's always important to have quite a tape collection, just because you don't want to use the same tape on every single material. This will probably rip out some suede, some nubuck. So this one I use on flat panel or tumbled leather. It's easy to find. I buy it at Lowe's in the bulk. It's actually really good on flat leather. The other thing I like to use is either X-Acto knife or some kind of tool to stuff this tape underneath. I know a lot of people, when they take it, they'll pull off a piece of tape, and what they'll do is they'll place it close to it. But guys, I like to put it up onto the panel that I'm painting, and then what I'll do is I'll take it and I will tuck it underneath the panel. That way I don't have to go through and redo my edge work. Most shoes this will work on, not all of them. I place it all the way down, get it nice and tucked in there. Then what I'll do is I'll take my X-Acto knife, the flat blade, and I'll just run it and slide that from on top of the panel where you can see it and shove it down underneath. Just make sure that you are using the back side of your blade, and I just tuck it underneath there. That way it leaves the edges nice and exposed. That way when I go to spray it, it gives it a nice solid coverage. I don't have to go back with a small point brush and touch these edges. Now there's always some chance of touch-up work, of course. If you've been doing customs for a while, you know that. But for me, on the threes, this is the easiest way to get a solid clean panel without having to touch it up with a thin brush and edge all the leather on top. So I'm gonna go ahead and tape these up real quick, and I'll be right back to show you guys. Alright guys, so I got everything taped up. And again, my trick, sometimes I use this vinyl tape. You can actually get it from angelusdirect.com. It is the 1/2 inch vinyl tape. This stuff is amazing for around your toe caps, around your back heel tabs, stuff like that. Just depends on what shoe you're working on. Sometimes I use it because the tighter you pull it, the stickier it gets. It just goes around these edges really well. So I do recommend, you know, every customizer needs some of this in their tape collection. Again, I use the general, it's called Duck Tape, D-U-C-K is the brand. It's decent, it's not too heavy, it's not too sticky, it's better than a lot of the stuff that's out there. But again, guys, I use my razor blade, I tuck it behind this top panel, and what that does is it allows me to spray this edge with my airbrush gun instead of having gone back and hand painting it, which there might always be some touch-ups, of course, guys. You know that. You guys are, you know, not new at this, but if that's the case, you know, just grab you some fine tip paintbrush and just go over these edges once you peel that tape off, but I just try to tuck it underneath, save me some time. So, alright guys, with this being all taped up and ready to go, my next step is to use Angelus deglazer and the pads. Again guys, angelusdirect.com. I'm just going to take some of this and I'm really going to work getting that wax layer, that top clear coat off this leather. Now this leather doesn't have a whole bunch on it. As you can tell, the black comes off immediately, and that's how you know that you're down to the leather and it's ready to go. Now this is the first step of 2 when I am prepping a shoe for paint. Again, I'm just going to go over these really good, get these edges really well, try to get in that top layer, in between that and the second layer of black panel leather, just so when I spray it, I can spray it down inside there. Guys, that's what it should look like before you move to step 2. So I'm going to let that dry real quick. I'm going to go ahead and hit this other shoe, and I'm going to let it dry for a good 15-20 minutes. I didn't put a lot of deglazer on my pad because, like I said, this doesn't have very many layers of wax on top, or a clear coat, whatever you want to call it, so it removes pretty dang fast, so it's not soaking up a lot of this deglazer. If you're working on a shoe that has super tumbled leather that's soaking up a lot of this deglazer, you're going to want to wait a few hours at least before you paint the shoe, and you want to make sure all that is evaporated and out of the shoe. Now guys, one step I do like to take it a little bit further when I am prepping a shoe, to go ahead and remove any particles on the part that I'm painting. You really don't see them until you start actually spraying, and as you can see, this is stuff you really couldn't see until I pulled it off the shoe. And I just go over this and just pull any of these. It could be dust, it could be stuff from the pad itself, it could be just hair that's fallen, you know, from the air onto the shoe. So I really like to make sure that the panel that I'm spraying doesn't have any debris or anything on it. So I just take some tape, go over it, make sure that I have everything ready to go off. And like I said guys, I didn't use too much deglazer on this, so I'm going to go ahead and move to step 2, to my bonding, which is the Bulldog. And you can get this at any automotive store, and all it is just a spray. It's a micro cap, so it sprays super thin. You don't want to add too much, and all you're going to do is just take it and lightly spray 2 coats of this, and you're going to let it dry about 7 minutes in between coats. And again, that's Bulldog Adhesive Promoter. And I'm going to go ahead and let this sit for about 7 minutes, come back, spray the second coat, and then I'll come back to show you guys the paints that I will be using. Alright guys, I got them all sprayed and they are dried. Again, I did 2 coats of the bonding spray, and I let them dry about 7 minutes in between coats. The next step is I am going to be using Angelus's Royal 5 and Angelus's matte finish. Of course, you guys know that I love this finisher. I'm able to get 4 different sheens out of this finisher, so this is always just pretty much the only one that I carry, unless I'm shooting like a glossy, like a Jordan 11 custom. Then I'll use Angelus's high gloss. But for this custom specifically, I will be using the matte finish and going with a half sheen. So I'll let it sit on there for about 10 seconds before I hit it with the heat gun to dry it out. I do mix some alcohol. This is just rubbing alcohol, and it is 70%. Guys, you cannot use the 90% alcohol. It has to be the 70%, or it will turn the paint into a latex. And I'll be putting just a tiny bit, mixing it in with this paint, just so it sprays a little bit smoother through my airbrush gun. So Angelus Royal 5 matches the Fragments almost to a T. It doesn't get any closer, guys. You might have to add maybe a drip, 2 dots of black paint in with 1 ounce of Royal 5 just for a little bit darker fill, but since I'm spraying on black, it's going to give it that deeper look from the get-go. If you're looking for a brighter, you might want to undertone this with a white paint, Angelus flat white, and that'll brighten this up a little bit. But on the black, this will give me the exact color that I'm looking for, guys. And all I'm going to do is go ahead and start airbrushing this. Super light coats and letting it dry in between. And I already have this mixed in my gun, and I'm just going to lightly just start spraying this, making sure that I'm getting inside all the crevices. Make sure that you get all the stitching really good, and I'm just going to spray light coats and then hit it with a heat gun to dry. Make sure that you get these edges really, really well. And this is my first coat, guys. So really, you're not going to see a huge difference. And then I'm just going to hit it with a heat gun. I'm usually about 690 degrees. Hold it a couple inches away. And since it's mixed with that alcohol, it tends to dry really smooth and a lot faster than it normally would. And another tip that I like to you know, when I'm giving advice to someone that's just starting, make sure that you're spraying both shoes at the same time. Don't finish one, because what happens if you add too many coats on one, it might leave it with a different shade of blue, it might be deeper. So just make sure that you're keeping both shoes even and just spray them at the same time. It will give that other shoe over there a little bit more time to dry and cure before your next coat, which is always important. I really don't like to just spray and leave the shoe completely wet and then let it dry. I don't like the way it finishes, so I'll just go back and forth and make sure that I spray even coats all the way until they're done. And guys, on this one, I need about 3 coats. This is about as minimum as you can do. Again, the least amount of paint you put on the shoe, the more flexible it's going to be, the less cracking risk you have. So just take your time, let it dry, light coats, and have fun with it. So I'm going to go ahead and keep spraying these, and I will be back when it's time to untape them. Alright guys, so I went ahead and sprayed 3 coats, and as you can see, it covers up the stitching really, really, really well. Leaves it nice and thin, super flexible. You just want to make sure you get all the edging as best you can. That way you have least amount of touch-ups when you go back after you peel the tape. So I'm going to go ahead and start peeling this tape off. I won't make you guys sit through it, and just show you how clean it comes out. Let me just show you a brief. How clean that edge work comes out if you tuck that tape. I mean, it's just super, super, super clean. So take the time. Taping is the most important part of a custom to me. Prepping, taping, because it leaves less work afterwards. It just comes out super clean from the get-go. So I'm gonna go ahead and start peeling these off, get them ready to start the clear coat process. So let me go ahead, finish these, and I'll be right back. Alright guys, so I went ahead and got the tape all off the shoe. They turned out really great, not really much overspray at all. Just another quick tip for anyone that's just getting into this or doesn't know about this trick. Sometimes when you use heat during your paint to get it to dry and you're using vinyl tape, sometimes that vinyl tape will get too hot and it'll shrink a little bit, or it'll move, and it's not going to be exactly where you set it down, and you'll get a little bit of overspray. Then I suggest just get a little bowl, get yourself some deglazer, go ahead and get an Angelus brush, and you're just going to dip the brush and you're going to just wipe it off the edges. I know a lot of customizers out there, their go-to is just to grab some white paint to cover it up. Guys, this is not the best way to do it. Just grab you some deglazer, acetone. I don't recommend acetone on anything, but if that's all you got, you can definitely use it. You can even try some alcohol and just slowly wipe that away. Careful so you don't touch the panel with the brush. Wipe it on your rag, then dip it in, wipe it off, and guys, it's just going to come out a lot cleaner. It's less paint, and you guys know my rule of thumb. The less amount of paint that's on a custom. It's going to make it more durable, it's going to make it last longer, it's going to look cleaner, and you're going to have more of a factory look. So with that being said, guys, I'm pretty happy with the tape job. It turned out great. I really don't have any edge work to do. I'm going to let this dry by itself for about another hour before I do anything else, and I'm just going to go over the shoe, make sure that everything is the way that I want it before I go ahead and seal it in with the Angelus matte finish. So I will be back in a little bit, show you guys. Alright guys, now I'm going to do the final step in this custom, and again, I talked earlier about the matte finish. I am not looking for a matte finish. I am looking for maybe a half sheen, or some might call it a semi-gloss. I hate the term gloss because I think customs look like customs when it's a gloss. So I am going to use this, and like I said, I'm looking for a half sheen. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is use an airbrush gun with this process, and I am going to let this sit on the shoe for maybe 5 to 10 seconds, and then I will be hitting it with the heat gun at about 700 degrees, and I will slowly be spraying it on the part that I have painted, and shortly after be hitting it with the heat gun, guys. So it'll be a little bit noisy, I apologize, and I will just try to keep my talking down. But all I'm going to be doing is hitting this lightly with the airbrush, just a light mist, nothing crazy, and then I'll be letting it sit for about 7 seconds, and then I'll hit it with the heat gun. Alright, and that is it, guys. And you can see that that has a little bit of a sheen, but not too glossy. I don't like a plasticky look, and this is nice and dried, finished, ready for me to shrink wrap and send out to the customer.